Well, we'll get started. Kind of, we have quite a bit to just kind of dive into and talk about. Kind of have a conversation. There's a couple things. I had sent out, and Ange and I have talked back and forth about. I think really probably the title that encompasses a lot of it is brand message confusion, and it's really not about social media. I think it's more about just confusion about identifying your voice and knowing how to articulate that, and feeling like, I think social media actually makes it more confusing. And I think if you can figure it out kind of for yourself first, it's just kind of a question of picking the outlet, right, that matches who you want to speak to. So we'll talk about that a little bit. I do want to cover some daily mentor challenge bonanza. It kind of feels like there's, the daily mentor calls were released, and people came back from Prague, and like there's been kind of all this excitement around kind of what to do with it, right? And making decisions, making sure that we're leading our teams and not chasing what's next or what's exciting and flashy and kind of around the corner, but also kind of being able to use that properly. So wanted to touch on that, and then real quickly, just to kind of start off with, would love to love to give you guys the chance to like voice any wins that you guys felt like you had this last month, or just any wins at all, like exciting things that are going on in your team, things that you guys are working on and excited about. Roxanne, can I pick on you?
All right. You want me just to tell you something exciting?
Yeah. Tell us something awesome that's going on in your team.
I spoke at, it's called the Recreational Professionals of Ontario, their annual convention on therapeutic use of essential oils in long-term nursing homes and palliative care. And it was extremely widely received. We have a number of nursing homes that are super excited to get started, and I've developed a protocol for them. I have a few nursing homes working on it already. And yeah, so it's been exciting that we're seeing some forward momentum. I have a platinum leader on my team who's a medical doctor who has an in with one of the largest cancer treatment facilities in Canada, and they're asking to meet with her to incorporate essential oils in their treatment in their hospitals. So yeah, we're going big.
Awesome. Yeah. Super cool. You want to just sit down? Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, and super cool to see, kind of your expertise and doTERRA's vision a little bit, align and connect with those types of people. Any other awesome wins? Jennifer, I know you did an event that was outside of kind of doTERRA, but like connected to doTERRA. How did your six-figure entrepreneur event go?
Oh my God, it was so amazing. So I ran a 3-day course called Six-Figure Network Marketers, and it was 98% doTERRA people that came to it, but we had a few non-doTERRA people at the event as well. And it was a 3-day course, and I ran it alongside, he owns the Elite Speaker Academy. His name's Armin Shafi, and we just had an amazing time. We ended up successfully bringing a lot of the students from that course signed on with us for more coaching, and I'm running my very first network marketing professional Think and Grow Rich 3-day course in 2 weeks. So we were able to sell that from the stage, and yeah, it was incredible, and it just kind of opened up the opportunities for more of the mindset stuff, which is what I love, to be able to use that in this profession, because I was seeing how impactful the studies and the principles of Think and Grow Rich was for me with my business. So just to be able to share that, and more just teaching a lot of the selling techniques as well, like learning how to turn the buyer into the seller, selling without selling, just skills training that a lot of people in network marketing don't come into this profession already with. And that was my background in the fitness industry. As a general manager, that's all I did was I taught sales staff how to sell fitness. And now, you know, in this industry, I'm seeing it's a lot of the same stuff, just people don't have the skills on how to sell and the building of the relationships and all of that. Like, we have a passion for oils and we have a passion for our product, but not necessarily the skills of how to turn that into a lucrative career. So it was powerful. It was amazing. We had so much fun, and I'm just starting now a new something new called Discover doTERRA, which is I'm working with Lindsay Ham. So as you probably all know her, and one of my frontline leaders, Brittany, and we're creating a monthly business opportunity meeting, and it's just the business opportunity, and it's 1 hour, and we're creating a really powerful presentation that we're kind of influenced by some other network marketing companies that have very powerful business opportunity presentations, and we're sort of using a few of the influences there along with you know, some stuff we already have, and we're going to be starting to run those monthly and really just getting more of the business opportunity and getting people really excited again about the profession and going beyond just the oils and seeing how the two things merge. So yeah, lots of fun stuff in the mix, and just focusing on, you know, building this business and building this profession, and being very proud of it and being proud of this type of business model.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. I saw that the pictures from your event, it looked like it was super fun. And sometimes I think that doing events outside of doTERRA, you know, that lead to doTERRA can kind of sometimes breathe a lot of great energy, you know, into your business. So awesome. If you guys have other wins, you're welcome to speak up. I wanted to kind of just dive into the stuff that we wanted to talk about. And this is really a conversation. You know, I think that, you know, I'll try to guide Ange a little bit on some of this, you know, stuff we talk about. And we had kind of gone back and forth on some questions, but I kind of wanted to start off, Ange, with you talking a little bit about kind of your take, or why you feel like, how you feel like publishing or kind of communicating to your audience has served you in the beginning, like before doTERRA, when it was just Whole Fit, and kind of like through that whole process.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I normally don't wear my Bluetooth for this. I try to reserve those for only like absolutely have to wear these potentially brain harming tools, but I can't charge my phone and listen at the same time. So here we go. Yeah, it's interesting because I know when I was first growing in doTERRA back in what year, 2014, it grew pretty fast. But what I always paused to remind people of is that really it took me 5-6 years to build to diamond, even though in doTERRA, on paper in doTERRA, it might have looked like 8 months or whatever it was. It really took that time frame beforehand, because what was happening was my audience, or my community that I had been nurturing and building and serving for the 5 years before doTERRA, were the first to come on board. And I actually think now, 5 years later, what I'm doing now within my brand is building the community that I'll work with in 5 years. For many people, it takes that long. And I wanted to open up with that because I think it's really important to understand that when you're building your community, especially if you're brand new to the online space, I know many of us here are, it can feel so discouraging in the beginning. It can feel like you post something and maybe it gets 1 comment or 5 likes and you put so much time and effort into it. But it's really important to know that it's not going unnoticed. It is always impacting somebody. And really what you're going for is the one person that it's impacting, one person at a time. And so we all go through that stage. But really, I think today, if we look at today at the time of this recording, entering 2020, social media is such a beast today. And you really, it can be tough to be noticed, because everybody's on it in some way. And so I think what I want to focus this conversation around today is how you can find your way. And by your way, I mean, what is the way that you're going to stay consistent? Because that's really what it's all about. And I believe that we all have that one sort of way or medium of reaching people that feels very natural to us. And it's not the same for everybody. Not everybody likes to be on video. Like most people actually don't, right? Not everybody likes to write. Not everybody likes to speak or use their voice. And so you have to really think, what is your preferred way of connecting with your audience? Is it through voice? Is it through video? Or is it through the written word? And once you really think about that, then you decide on a way to show up consistently. Because here's what is very common today. As much as everybody's on social media and it can feel like your posts get drowned out in this sea of content all the time, most people aren't willing to be consistent with it. And so they're almost bouncing around from platform to platform all the time, looking for the latest thing. I know we're going to talk about podcasting a little bit today, and that's a good example. Now you're seeing radio, the whole like radio platform is now moving to podcasting because that's where the audience is. And so it's always kind of this question of where is my customer hanging out, that person that I most want to reach, and how can I show up consistently with a strategy? So maybe that's some of what we'll talk about today. But I think what I was doing back in 2009, 2010 is what really formed a kickoff when I started in doTERRA in 2015. And like I said, now today I really see this as I'm building my customer, that trust with my customer that's probably going to enroll in like 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. So what, I love that. So what do you feel like, what are the right questions that, so you had said kind of voice, video, and written word. How do you kind of prepare what you're gonna, I think that one of the perceptions that maybe, people view other people who have, or seem to have kind of everything buttoned up, is that there's this process that they follow. Do you have kind of a process that you follow, even schedule wise, to like prepare for maximizing the time that you do communicate to your audience?
I do and I don't. It's interesting. I would say I more so let the audience drive. And actually, so if I go back, I've been doing a Q&A type show now for 4 years. It started weekly. And although it wasn't strategic at the time to start with a Q&A type show, it actually turned out to be a very strategic thing because it meant that I was always creating content that my audience actually wanted. So I was really bringing them in on that decision, not just me saying, okay, this month I'm going to talk about XYZ, and who cares if they're into it or not? That's what I want to talk about, or that's what I'm really feeling. I think a brand and the work that we do is this living, breathing exchange. And so I still do that. I started off weekly 4 years ago, and now I do that as a monthly show, but I kind of build up to that. And I actually have about, no joke, 300 or so Evernotes of topics that I've never podcasted on or never released because it just hasn't been the right time. But I've grabbed that content from my audience, from different questions. And I kind of go with my gut based on what I feel is really being asked out there. And I think if you guys are taking notes in some way, that would be probably my hottest tip to you when it comes to creating content, is flip it more to be a lens on your audience so that they're telling you what they want. And think about what that looks like. Maybe it's doing more polls on Facebook. Maybe it's actually doing a Q&A type exchange in some way. Again, thinking about what are you most comfortable in? Propping up a video and doing a Facebook Live. You can even do interactive Q&As on Instagram, for example, if you like video. But for the podcast, what I've done for the last couple of years is they submit questions, and then I actually make that into an episode. And so that's really helped me to know what I should talk about and when I should talk about it. And like I said, I use Evernote, which is a digital notebook tool. I'm sure many of you have heard of it. That's just my preferred way of tracking my best ideas. So often, like if I'm out for a run, I'll get a lot of great ideas. And when I'm done my run, before I ever switch gears and come into the house, I'll take a few minutes and write down and kind of dump out of my brain my train of thought and the ideas that came to me. And that will usually form the bones of a future episode. But sometimes they're just parked for a long time before I know it's time to release it and make an episode out of it.
So with the and I'm assuming you're talking about the Whole Fit Facebook Live that you do from your Whole Fit page, right?
Right.
So I remember when you started that, did you notice that the majority of the people were doTERRA people? And
Yeah,
did that I mean, because I think that one of the things that maybe some of us struggle with is like, what's the difference between that and a team? It's almost like it's not a glorified team call at this point for you. But I feel like one of the things that I've struggled with, or, and other leaders, is if I were to take, power talks or whatever it is outside of EOE leaders or your business Facebook group, and it was just your brand, then really it's the same audience that follows you over there. And you're kind of starting over, creating or attracting a new audience, right? And so I guess, like, how have you seen that medium of communicating, like, serve both your team, which, at this point, at least for us who didn't have brands before, most of our fans are our team. And then using that and saying, okay, well, who else is this serving? Like, how have you seen outsiders start to merge into that? And did it happen fast? Has it been effective?
Yeah, and actually, the answer to that is almost within the question you just asked, because I remember in the beginning, I started it because I thought, well, if my team has these questions and I assume other people have these questions, why don't I just open this up to all teams? And I really love that about doTERRA. It's my favorite thing, is that we come from a place of abundance as we share. And I really, I think that's why I made that decision to just make it completely accessible. And you're right, it's a lot of my team on there. I'd say it's probably 80% of people already enrolled that tune into that. But the 20% that aren't enrolled and often tune in and listen for years or have been following me for years, they eventually do become a customer. And I'll tell you that today I don't teach essential oil classes like I did in the beginning, but I still enroll 5 people on average a month, solely because I think of what I do through that show. And I create that trust with them. They really get to know my heart as a leader. I think consistency really means a lot to people today when there's so many, right? There's so much just waffling and in and out kind of behavior. And so it's that 20% that I'm over time, I'm growing. And while I'm doing that, I'm giving back to the whole, I guess, in a way. So it's, now a question I often get too is, do I create private stuff for my team that I'm not doing publicly? Yes and no. Like I do, we have different core programs that we run as a team, which I'm sure everyone does, like these daily mentor calls. It's a good example of that. We're all kind of taking it and tweaking it how we will, but Elise has opened that up company wide, right? So that's a good example of just how we tend to take ideas and create something special with them in our team, but then share openly and publicly. So I don't know if that helps, but I think I love when we open up as leaders and just make our content accessible. Yeah.
I think one of the things you said that I think is probably the key to what you said is the word consistency. And I think that, it's interesting as I backtrack through like my journey in doTERRA, I remember when most of you came into doTERRA, we did this, like, I think it was like every Monday night, team call, had a guest speaker, covered a topic. And then I kind of feel like social media was introduced. And because it was almost like the early days of doTERRA, there wasn't really social media was not what it is today. No. It wasn't this distraction. It was like, go to, what was it called? Oh, freeconferencecall.com. Right. And it was this simple thing that everyone gathered with. And then it was Zooms, and then teams got big, and teams were doing their own Zooms and doing their own team calls. And you kind of feel like, well, I guess I'll speak to that whole audience. And so anyway, boiling all that back down, my question was, when you say the word consistency, I think that many of us are, kind of maybe hesitant, like where does that consistency for you come? Like what drives that consistency besides, it's not peer pressure at this point, I don't think. It's not like, oh shoot, I've now created this beast that is demanding that I show up, every whatever it is. It does genuinely feel like you show up because you want to show up. So what drives you to show up because you want to show up?
That's a really good question. I think,
because you don't have to.
Yeah, I honestly think I do it because I feel like I have something worth saying.
Okay.
I feel like and I won't show up if I don't, to be honest.
What gets you to a place where you feel like you have something worth saying? Sorry, I'm drilling down on this because I feel like most people don't show up consistently because they don't feel like they have something worth saying. Period. Right.
And we all do, because we're all living through something. This is called being a human being, right?
Yeah.
I think, the only thing I apply a consistent cycle to is that I do show up monthly for that Q&A. Anything I do outside of that, if I release podcast episodes on certain topics, or I blog about something, or I do a Facebook Live, it can be spontaneous because it's something that I'm really feeling at that moment. There's something I want to open up a conversation about. And so that's what typically drives that. Now I do have, like I said, I have some systems in place that remind me to be consistent. So I feel like that weekly show, for example, or that monthly episode drives some consistency for me because I work backwards from that a little bit.
The
first of the month. Yeah. The first of the month creates a lot of consistency for us, right? I'm sure we all put in long days today where we really think about our month and we cast that vision and we create and we have that, we get into action on day one of a month. And so there are some, consistent things within our schedule. But yeah, I want to remind you guys that I think it's a really common thing to think that you don't have something worth sharing. Because you think that, oh, it's not big and bold and perfect, and I won't have this perfect way of getting it out there. And that's such a trap, and it keeps you small. It keeps you smaller than you're here to be and lead, because everybody that you may look at and think they have this big bold message and you're not them, they started off with those same feelings. And I think the only way you find your voice, honestly, is by using it more. You use it and you suck a lot in the beginning. You go on live and have lots of issues. And oh my gosh, I still do all the time, but you show up and people get to know your heart, and over time you build that community, and they're not always there forever. I mean, I think like numbers steadily grow over time, but you'll see a lot of people come and go over that time. And that doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. The point is that you show up and you understand that sometimes you're showing up for one person, and that's the point. Like we say with classes, right? Yeah. Showing up and having only one person in attendance is not a flop. That's what it was meant to be.
Yeah. The question that came to my mind as we went through this exercise was, why do I have something worth saying? And making a list to yourself. I know, Kirsten, and for each of us in our different belief sets, right? But I think we all have something we're saying because we're children of God. Like there is divine potential in us, right? And something that I'm always reminded of is that divine potential part of it is to create, so we're all creators, right? And as creators, if we have to feel like we have something we're saying. Anyway, it's just kind of a question that like, if when you answer that question, why do I have something worth saying? There is not something deeper than who you're comparing yourself against on social media, then it isn't the right comparison, right? To go deeper with that. I don't know if that makes any sense, but.
Yeah. And I just want to add to that. I think we can all think about a time when we were feeling down, or we're just having a really crappy day, and we happened to pop online and somebody had shown up in a way that helped us shift a bit. in that moment. And like, how grateful are we for those people when they show up at the right time? And I think that's the thing that I always remind myself, especially when I don't feel like doing it. And I know I should do it. I don't always like using that word, but when I said I was going to do something, right? And there's times when I'm like, oh, I'd so much rather do something else than this right now. But I think about those times when someone happened to show up and share something online, and it totally helped me shift my mood. And you know, we're grateful for those moments and for those people, and we can all be that person at times to somebody else.
Yeah. So it always just goes back to this. It's not about you. Like,
right.
Would we stop making it about us? Like, this is the veil that gets put in front of us, right? That it's always about us. So for kind of everyone that's on, and if you guys want to comment, you know, we're just kind of talking, but if you guys want to comment and kind of comment your question or your challenge with how you want to show up with your message, I think it would be really good. I think it's a really good place to start. Like, if you naturally see yourself in a place where you like, you know, communicating or creating content, voice, video, or written word, I think that's a really powerful question, because I think sometimes we will hire people to be our voice, do our videos, or be our written word, and it comes across inauthentic because we're not doing what comes up most authentically to us, right? And so I think it's really, really key. I know that from a technical perspective, that Facebook Live you do once a week. Yeah. I think it's important that everyone knows how you reposition that content, right? Mm. So it's not like you take that Facebook Live and you do a separate podcast. What do you do with that audio? That kind of like, because I think that one of the big misconceptions is people see tons and tons of content being produced and they're like, oh my gosh, I could never do all that. When in all reality, if you would just focus on creating one super valuable piece of content and then repositioning it, it is way more impactful and it's way easier on you. So kind of go through what you do with that one piece of content. Once you have a podcast you've created or you've done a Facebook Live, what is that? Do you do it yourself? Do you hand it off to people? What does that process look like?
I do it myself because I actually do enjoy it. And so, you know, there are obviously so many services and tools out there that you can use to outsource what I'm about to say to you. But I enjoy having kind of my hands on the fingerprints of it all, just because I like that still, right? So yeah, just wanted to mention that. But yeah, so maximizing is in my top 5. So if that's any of your strengths or interests, then you'll like this. I personally never like to do something and have it just kind of go, you know, do something and let it just, okay, that's it, done. I take something and I always think like, how can I leverage this material? So I'll use what Kyle just said. So when I do the Facebook Live, I take that. So then that video stores on Facebook forevermore. So that's an accessible video there. But then I download that video, which downloads as an MP4. And I use a tool called ScreenFlow, but you can use like GarageBand or Camtasia, some kind of audio editing tool. I import that MP4 so that I can strip the audio from it. So again, I'm not focused on perfection so much. I'm focused on how can I leverage this content. If I was focused on having this perfect, tight podcast, I would never do what I'm saying to you, but I would also not be releasing content as much as I do, okay? So you have to think of what your goal is. So I take the audio from that Facebook Live, and my goal with it is now to have it go out as a podcast. So do you want me to share how you actually do that?
Yeah, well, yeah. Piece? And we can, you know, there's a guy that I really like that's super simple and all of his stuff is free, or a lot of his stuff is free, and that's Pat Flynn. And he has tons of YouTube videos. Yeah, and so but yeah, I'm trying to think, well, let me ask you guys, do you guys want to hear kind of like that process? Is that helpful to you, or are we kind of like dividing the group here and one half is shutting off and the other half is continuing the journey? What do you guys? What do you guys?
Yeah.
I have
Roxanne is in.
que-
Roxanne is a geek.
I
Here we
have
go.
questions. I have
Okay.
questions.
So yeah. So
Yeah.
before we take a right, hand turn, let's open it up a little bit.
Let me just ask one quick question. This will be easy. So when you go Facebook Live, do you also go Instagram Live?
Yes.
Okay. And
Yes,
then
okay.
yes, great. That's all I really wanted to know.
Yeah. So, and that
And
also
how?
touches on, if you're going to do something once, how else can you maximize it, right? So yeah, I didn't actually mention that at the hop. So Facebook Live, I have 2 devices going. I've got Facebook Live streaming and I have Instagram streaming, and I'll have, I'll have almost equal participants on each, right? So why not do that, right? So I take that Facebook Live video, I put it into an editing tool so that I can extract just the audio. I send that off to a platform called Libsyn, which is the most popular podcasting platform out there. And Libsyn, which is Libsyn, Liberated
Super cheap.
Syndication.
$7 a month. Yeah.
Totally cheap. The cool thing with it though is and you need to have a tool that allows you to go between you and iTunes, for example, right? So it takes your audio, you give it a title, you can type in a few show notes. You can really polish it up if you want and add pictures and edit an intro and an extra and all of that. But you put that into Libsyn. Libsyn then sends it to iTunes for you, but it will also send it to other audio platforms like SoundCloud, Spotify, Stitcher. You can even have it export your podcast as a video to YouTube. I don't totally like that because I like to actually make a nicer video for YouTube, which I'll share in a second. But Libsyn takes that audio and gets it onto many audio-based platforms. So now I've done a video on Facebook Live, which also streamed to Instagram Live. I've taken the audio, I've uploaded it to iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Spotify, all through one platform called Libsyn. But then also when I have that MP4 that I downloaded from the Facebook Live that I did, I take that and I will add a little bit of an intro or whatever and polish it up if needed, and then I'll export that to YouTube. So those are the various platforms I'm hitting all at once. But then the last thing I'll do is I'll add it to a social media circulator. So I use one called Meet Edgar. And I like Meet Edgar because it truly does circulate your content. It doesn't just post it once like a scheduling tool like Hootsuite or even Facebook Scheduler. I can add my podcast episode I've just created to this library in Edgar, and then every once in a while it posts it for me. So if I say every Wednesday at 4:00, I want you to post a podcast episode for me, it'll draw from that library. So now it's like this thing that circulates like throughout the year. Now audio, I just want to touch on really quick because I think that of all the things we do, audio is a really important one to look at today. Because if you think about like what you're really competing for today is someone's attention, right? And so where Facebook Live and Instagram Live, where we lose people is that they can't do multiple things at once while they're tuning in. And this is the world we live in. I know I like to listen to podcasts while I'm folding laundry or doing like some of that white space work, right? When I don't have to really concentrate on what I'm doing. Whereas if I'm having to watch a Facebook Live or an Instagram Live, I have to be kind of locked into what's happening there. So this is why audio really helps you meet your customer where they're at, where they live busy lives, where they have commutes. I mean, somebody can't really watch your Facebook Live while they're driving an hour back and forth to work, right? Of course, we don't want to encourage that. So audio also, like, it just makes sense with the day we live in. But what you are also seeing again is the podcast platform is becoming saturated. How many of you know someone who's launched a podcast in the last year? So it's really like, you really want to, again, think about consistency here. What's going to help you be consistent if you're going to start a podcast? Because another thing you'll see is someone will launch a podcast, they'll come out of the gate strong, and then all of a sudden there's crickets for like a year. They don't have any episodes. So, and I mean, with podcasting, you can approach that in different ways. But I think you want to teach your audience what they can expect. So if you are only going to release one episode a month because you feel like that's all you can commit to, then let them know that. Kind of build some excitement and hype around that. Or maybe you want to do seasons where you batch record, 12 episodes over the course of 2 days and have them release every week for a season. And then so you're only doing the work over the course of 2 days. You can do a lot of things like strategically, but audio is a really important method of marketing today, because it doesn't have as much commitment for the person on the other end, which unfortunately is the world we live in.
Yeah. Oh man, what was the question that I had? I love this, and I think that it's funny how when you see people launch brands, it seems like you hear people all the time like, you know, I'm writing a book, I'm launching a podcast, and I'm selling a course, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the MO. And you know what? Those things are awesome. Like that's super awesome. And you should do those. You know, those things are definitely things that you should pursue. I just think that consistency is the right word, right? It's a lot like building our doTERRA businesses. We sample to people or introduce the business to people in the beginning, and they sit back and watch. And, you know, and then they make the decision as they've kind of been able to see us, you know, what we've done. One of the things that I think is interesting is we have like this this Zoom isn't about a clash, but we have this really big push by somebody like Elise to return us to the basics, right? You guys are distracted, social media, like whatever it is. And then here we are talking about building brands, right? And that whole thing. And I actually think that they fit together, and they are really, really, really important, because it's kind of the long game versus the short game, right? It's creating your platform. I was at this event, and Dean Graziosi was talking about this competition that Arsenio Hall was in for raising money. Yeah, it's crazy, for raising money for this charity. And there was all these celebrities in a room, and the goal was to raise as much money as they could for this charity. And so the clock started. All these celebrities are calling people. They're like writing numbers on the board, how much money they've raised. And it comes to Arsenio, and they were like, hey, and for those of you guys who don't remember him, he had the talk show and the whoop whoop. Anyway, like in the 90s. And if you don't know what that was, then my impression didn't help. So, but anyway, they got to Arsenio and they asked him, they said, hey, tell us, you know, what's going on? He was like, oh man, like I couldn't get anyone to pick up, and I didn't raise any money. And they were like, dude, what happened? He was like, you know, when I had a stage, everyone wanted to be on it. Everyone wanted to talk to me. Everyone wanted to be involved with me. But now that I don't have a stage, no one really cares. Mm. And it was a really, really powerful example that, you know, in doTERRA, you either come in with a stage, right, that you've built, or you kind of rely upon all the basic strategies, you know, which are great. Like Elise has built a huge stage, like without any social media, just by adding value. So you can build stages on and offline. But the question is like, how are you? I think it definitely is a time in doTERRA where it's important for you to build a stage in some way, shape, or form. So don't let I just released a podcast, book, and whatever deter you. Understand that like the stage is more important than the content that's being marketed, you know, for the stage.
That's so good. You know what I was just thinking is kind of the bridge between the approach Elise has taken and what we're talking about. It really is the same thing, because it's about relationships. And if anything, when you go through the daily mentor calls, what you really get from it is the ability to move a customer from experience to experience, right? It's the nuances. It's the checking in with them when you said you were going to, just like we're talking about, that consistency. And when it comes to brand, this is like probably the biggest tip within it all, is build your brand one person at a time. Is, you know, don't focus on numbers, focus on really making your audience feel seen and heard and connecting with them. Like if you do a post on Facebook, take the time to engage with them in the comments. Just like you're learning in the daily mentor calls of what it looks like to really build relationships. It's all really the same conversation, right? And I think that, like, I love that these daily mentor calls, which so many of us, because we're on your team, we we started off building this way, really. And we kind of got away from it as a methodology, as a model for starting our business. And when I think about what this approach did for all of us, is it created this framework so that for some of us, we could get up to some of the fancier stuff down the road, but we can't do the fancy unless we have that foundation in place, right? And so it just is that nice back to basics approach for all of us, regardless of what rank we're at, if we're ready to really bring momentum into our business this year, and give us that time to get out there and use voice or audio or video to expand that message, because we have the basics.
Yeah. So a couple more questions. I think that one of the traps that I think when you're committed to showing up consistently, it's important to not be on social media, or to curb how you consume social media. Because I think if you're trying to show up consistent, I know I've felt this, I know Kirsten and I have talked about this and others as well, that if you're trying to be inspired, right? And if you're trying to play the infinite game, it's impossible to play the infinite game when you are consuming content from a finite world, right?
Wow.
And so anyway, I think that have you ever created, a podcast or a title, and then maybe been in like a social media loop, like too much on social media, and like kind of questioned what it is that you had prepared to talk about because you had let social media influence what you had felt inspired originally to do?
Oh yeah.
Is that too complicated?
Yeah, no, definitely. Because I think the more that we look around and look at what everyone else is doing, we doubt our own message. So
yeah,
it is a bit of a tricky balance. I think that, and I've actually done a lot of recordings on this topic, because I think it's such a big deal today. We have to be able to control who we're allowing into our minds, and the influence of social media on our life. Like we have to run it. It can't be the other way around. And one of the simple practices I recommend is that you actually have almost time slots throughout your day set aside just for doing that, just for browsing, so that it doesn't get out of control. And then, you get off of it once, like, let's say you give yourself 10 minutes once or twice a day, and then you get out of there, because it really can be a trap at times. And the world will have you second guessing yourself constantly if you allow it to. There's always going to be somebody who is teaching the complete opposite of what you do, or makes you feel like you shouldn't talk because they're talking a lot about something. And it's just that's not the truth. It just, you can buy into that if you spend too much time on it. So we have to have parameters for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I know I was just, a friend of ours was doing a retreat in Maui, and Fraser and this guy named Rob, he had an extra bed. So I went out and hung out with those guys, and Fraser is amazing. And one of the things that he did early, or when his team got really big, is he would delete Facebook and Instagram at the end of every day, right? He'd delete them from his phone, and he would tell his team that he would never respond to them through Facebook Messenger. Like, Facebook Messenger and Facebook and Instagram were for prospecting, period. If you wanted to reach him, and if you wanted any training and any response, you could communicate with him through WhatsApp. And so slowly all of his team started to migrate over to WhatsApp, and he would only reinstall WhatsApp after like 11 o'clock in the morning. So he'd reinstall at 11 o'clock in the morning, and he'd start to get all these pings from his team, which he was cool with. And he would reinstall Facebook and Instagram in the morning so that he could check all of his DMs and Facebook messages of all the people that he had been prospecting. Yeah. And so it took a little while to kind of like teach his team, but they knew that before 11 o'clock, Fraser was prospecting. He was getting his stuff done. He was, kind of doing all those things. And then after he had done his own personal production, he would communicate with them through WhatsApp.
Honestly, what a powerful lesson to teach his team. Because that's the thing, as leaders, we're teaching our team about boundaries and priorities through how we respond, right? Yeah. So what a gift he gave his team in teaching them he wasn't going to get back to them at certain times because this is when he's focused on X, Y, Z. And that's something for us all to really think about, is when we get back to somebody right away, what are we actually teaching through that, right? We're teaching that we're accessible at any time of day. And that's not the goal of this business, right? Our true reason for being here is for freedom, so that we can live and give our best.
Yeah.
Right? Bottom line.
Yeah. I love it. So I want to take probably.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm like, I don't want to be patient anymore. Hi. Okay. Sorry, Kyle. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just,
do your thing.
My hand raised. Okay. So this is like honest truth. We're all diamonds. Like, this is like a safe space to just share, right? Like what I'm experiencing and like how I want to move forward. So here's maybe a fear that I have, and I watch you, Ange, and I love the way you do this. I have this kind of fear that if I want to attract, okay, how do I say this? Okay, most of my audience is doTERRA, right? I've been building doTERRA for 10 years. It's been amazing. I'm so grateful. And I want to expand. I want to enroll new people. And I'm like the one that anytime I post anything, it's only doTERRA people that comment and that love me. And I'm like, I love you too. And I really need some of you that are doTERRA. You know, I think we all kind of feel like that, right? And so what I see you do is you are very like whole fit and doTERRA. You talk about oils all the time. You know what I mean? Like, you're doTERRA, like straight up doTERRA. And another philosophy is that I see other top network marketing leaders do in doTERRA and out is more of a generic wellness, right? So it's more of like, let me attract my audience to me because I'm speaking about lots of different topics, you know? And so you'll see me talk mostly about business coaching for moms, right? And that's my niche and that's who I am, and that's cool. But I don't talk about doTERRA business coaching for moms because I don't know why. Why? Because I'm afraid that if I say doTERRA, then all the other network marketing people are going to be like, she's going to steal our people. And so we don't want to follow her for that reason. So anyway, is this making sense? Like, I'm like, how do you choose to speak about doTERRA all the time? And I love it because the truth is, all I really want to do is doTERRA. Like, it's so
ultimately you want to enroll
amazing.
them.
I really believe it's the best. Like, of all the things I've ever tried, it's by far the best. But I do feel like I almost have to go through this like backdoor approach now to find people who will follow me for long enough. I feel like if I just go doTERRA, then they're like, oh, I know who you are. And I'm like, no, you don't. I've got lots of things to teach you. You know what I mean? But maybe this is all me like making this up in my head. So I want to open up this conversation because I think I'm probably not the only one that feels this way.
Yeah, this is a big one. And I think, I mean, I can only share my own feelings on this, which have always been, I never want to, I guess, hide what I do, or I don't want to use the word trick, but it's the only word that's coming to mind. I don't want to trick somebody into, like, I always like to be upfront about the whole thing. And I do think a lot of our industry does kind of hide what they do. I know there's some companies who that is their whole approach. Like, you never share what you actually do until you get to like the enrollment stage. And it's like, I as a customer on the other end don't like that feeling. So it's why I never really went that path. But I think you can be strategic in it. So one thing, and maybe this speaks to what you're asking specifically, is I do have whole fit programs like my Beautiful Life Lab, right? Which have nothing to do with doTERRA, just like business coaching might not have anything to do with using the oils, but at some point I work them in as, if you want to go deeper in this process of self-leadership, this is a key tool, right? So I'll loop it into conversations throughout my program without it being this like, hidden way of like trying to get them to enroll. It's just like I'm just dripping it on them a little bit throughout that program. But when it comes to online, I'm pretty upfront about it, and I'm consistent there, where I'm like, and to be honest, like I take an approach of like, when you're ready, here's how you get started. Like I do leave it kind of open, which then once they start engaging with me more, I tend to follow more of an Elise Chedevy approach, where I'm like really checking in with them every couple of days, trying to get them to sample, you know, have an experience, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think
And
that we all at
I
some
love
point.
the way you do it, by the way. I love the way you do it. But I do also feel, and this is just like a thought in my head, so I'm just going to say it. I do feel like you're able to do that maybe a little bit, maybe more easy. I don't want to say easy because I know you work so hard, but because you have been building that audience outside of doTERRA, like you said, for 5 or 6 years. So you do already have like an audience that isn't, you know what I mean? They're following you for lots of reasons, right? And I think that's what we all want. We all want people to follow us, whether they want oils or whether they don't, because eventually we want them to want oils, right?
Mm-hmm. I think you go hard on the idea you have and create something that is somewhat outside of doTERRA, but is obviously still very much a part of it. Like you have been doing that, right? With the retreat idea you had, and just really working, like wanting to bring in, I think your question though about the power mom, for example, they might be already in another network marketing company. And so maybe you're feeling a little bit of that resistance. Like you don't want people to think you're like poaching or something, right?
Yeah. I'm very much afraid of that. Yeah. Cause I'm not, but it could
So
be
I think
seen.
what you do is you just like shine really bright, because you are an incredible mentor for women. And I think that you show up within that space as that, and just trust and know for sure they're going to ask for more information, because they'll want to be, you don't even have to say sometimes what you're doing. Women just want to be a part of what you're doing because of who you are. Mm-hmm. So I think you can definitely rely on that. And you may not even have to mention doTERRA, and they'll know. I mean, everyone Googles everybody today, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah.
And would you share it if they never enrolled in doTERRA? I think that's kind of like, I mean, truthfully, like if you're stripping it all away, you know, the long-term decision would be, would I continue to build this message, even if they never enrolled in doTERRA? Would I still find value? You know, would that still feed my mission? You know?
Yeah, that's a really good point, because once you get to diamond level and above, I mean, we don't do things for the money anymore, right? We do it for, a part of us would die if we didn't do it.
Yeah,
if we didn't share and use our gifts in this way.
You wouldn't be doing your podcast. I guess that's kind of my 100%, point. Right?
No, yeah.
If it was
so
like
much
just
of what
this
I do is
recruiting
not
tool.
for money anymore.
Yeah. Awesome. Any other questions? Lots of really great stuff. Super, super grateful, Ange. I know that
Julie's on. Hi guys.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask something super quick.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah,
Me and
please.
Erica are sitting in the same room. We're in a hotel.
Of course you are.
I was just gonna ask, kind of to piggyback on what Kirsten just said. Like, if you're super passionate about a few different avenues, but you want to seem consistent in your message, you know, if you're going to choose sort of like a theme, because you're doing your live, you're tuning it into a podcast, all that kind of stuff, but you want to seem consistent, but you're passionate about talking about, you know, mental health and the oils and mental wellness, but then you're also super passionate about talking about the business. And, you know, because I look at, for me, I'm like, I just did a course talking about earning 6 figures in network marketing, which was generic. But then I also love showing up and talking about the mental wellness space and using essential oils and aromatherapy and natural medicine to help with our mental wellness, because that's my story. Then I also love talking, you know, so how do you choose, you know, but then I could also pop on and talk about time management, right? And so how do you, if you want to choose an avenue and do this, and I know, Ange, you know that I'm like super gung-ho about doing events and speaking and all that kind of stuff. So I love the idea of just having a platform, being able to share my heart and doing something, and using social media or using this as a platform basis. But sometimes I feel like, you know, sometimes I'll be like, okay, I really just want to jump on. So I'll go onto the Dough Planner Facebook page and go do a talk about something that's going to help my planners. But then if I want to talk more business, I'll go onto my business page, because that one's called Jennifer Bittner, Mind, Fitness, and Success Mentor. But then if I want to talk about natural medicine, I probably will go on my personal profile, because I think more people that, you know, then it almost seems like you're diluting yourself, because you're trying to shift depending on what you want to talk about. Like, is it more useful just to stick to one message and just do that message, as opposed to, yes, you might be passionate about a few different things, but then you just seem very confusing to your audience? What would you say on that? if that
I
makes
wonder if you could have a schedule for when you're showing up within the spaces and when you're not, right? Like you have, and that's a great example of having a lot of different things going on, which, I mean, the main thing is we could all talk and do a lot of things. That doesn't mean we should be. I actually just talked about this a couple weeks ago on my show, because when you're in a position of influence as well as a leader, there's a lot of things you could give your voice and attention and energy to help or improve or be a voice for. That doesn't mean that you should be for every single thing, because you really want to, your energy is everything in this business, right? And so when you have a lot of different things going on, I think what you want to do is think about your year, think about it a year out. When do you want to breathe life into various programs or focuses that you have? Like you should have a season. If you love public speaking, then you should have a season when you really go on the road and you share that one consistent message. You should have a season, like probably right now you're doing a lot of marketing for the dough planner, and that makes sense. And then you honestly should go pretty quiet about that for the rest of the year, assuming most people have bought their planner for the year, right? So when you think about everything you do and could give your attention to, think about, is there a time for that to make sense? And then give yourself permission to back away from it. Like I run, within my brand, I have Ready, Set, Glow as a detox program. I run twice a year, but when it's not running, I don't give any time to it at all. And I do that with any programs I have. So, and you could even do this just quarterly. You could look at what's going on this quarter. What does it make sense to give my time to? And what does that look like? And in doing that, what do I need to let go of and not be giving my time to so much? This is the biggest dilemma we all face, is where we're giving our time to, especially as leaders. You're having lots of requests of your time from your team. There's a time and place for that, but there does come a time when it doesn't make sense for you to be the person doing all of that for your team anymore, right? Where you look at graduating things. So kind of a big answer for that question, but we all have to, and maybe honestly, Jenny, everyone, her name's Jenny, she prefers Jenny. When for you may come to a time in the next couple of years where it doesn't make sense for you to do certain things because you know how much you love speaking on a stage. And so you want to really honor that. And maybe that becomes a real piece of how your money circulates, right? So food for thought. But we all have to do a lot of things before we figure out what we truly want to be doing. That's the truth of it. So sometimes you're in a messy season of doing a lot of things you shouldn't be. And you're simply in it because you need to get clarity that you shouldn't be doing it anymore.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, we are close to kind of finishing up, but lots, I hope it's been really, really helpful. I think this is something that's like been on everyone's mind and they've definitely invested time and money into. Real quickly, I just wanted to show you guys, I know that, let me see if I can pull it up here. So I will send this to all of you guys. Can you guys see my screen? Hopefully. So if you guys, the text message platform that Elise uses is really great. Our challenge is always, if you have teams in Canada or South Africa or Mexico or the UK, they can't really follow along with a text message. And I always feel like it's one of the things that I think is super key is being able to get those daily reminders. And so anyway, I'll send this to everyone, and I may even be able to copy the whole thing into your own ManyChat account if you have one. I don't know, but all of the daily mentor calls are in Facebook Messenger, right? And so when people click the link that to basically opt into receiving the messages, they can get them all in Facebook Messenger. So this is what it'll look like. They'll get a message that says Daily Mentor Call 1. Each day for the next weeks, you're going to be sent and I know, I went back and forth, Ange, between organizing it kind of how you did and just creating the version that will match exactly. And I went with the version that will match exactly because there was too much content to pack into each of the messages. So anyway, we can kind of go through all of it. But basically what happens is when they click yes, it takes them to day one audio, they listen to it. If they click no, it says we'll check back with you. And then further on, when there's assignments, so each day when there's assignments, it'll say daily mentor call 10 assignments, and it will give them the assignments. So they'll get this message. Here's what the daily mentor call is about. They'll click yes. They'll receive the audio that they can listen to straight from Messenger. And then if there's assignments related to it, they'll get those assignments so they know exactly what to do. And later on in some of them, there are, there's other tools that go with the assignments. So if they want to watch a webinar or whatever they might be, and all of the docs are connected just to generic Google Docs. So I wanted to I know some of us don't mind sending people back to Elise's site. Some of us, want something that they could use for everyone. So anyway, if you want to use it, you're more than welcome to use it. Nothing will ever be pushed out to it, right? Like we're never going to send a broadcast to them, for whatever. It's just daily mentor calls. We have new people in South Africa getting started. And so they're like, well, hey, we'd love to use the daily mentor calls, but and some of them don't have the discipline to go back to the website every day and just check the next call. But Facebook Messenger allows them to get pinged. They can click on the audio and they can listen to it and duplicate it with our teams internationally and wherever they might be. So anyway, if you have any questions about that, I'll have Julianne, once I finish, send out this recording as well as any notes. Also, I'll have her include, I'm going to stop sharing. I'll have her include all the videos and tools you need to launch a podcast, right? So we didn't really go down that road because it's a whole other conversation. And honestly, you guys can watch like 1 or 2 videos and it's really, really easy to do for yourself. So we'll include those resources, the ManyChat link for that, and in the recording for this that we'll send out to everyone. Any other questions or wins? Oh, it's a software. Yeah, it's like $10 a month. It's called Many, M-A-N-Y. I don't know. Yeah, somebody put it in there already. So it's just a communication tool for Messenger that you can kind of create. It works similar to email, but it's through Facebook Messenger, which has a way higher response rate. No, they just need to be on Facebook. So they just need to have a Facebook Messenger app installed. So if they hate Facebook, you can say, listen, I know you never like to be on Facebook, just download the Messenger app. And they could actually just only have the Messenger app and receive the daily mentor calls through that. I wrote down this question to finish, but the question was kind of, what questions do we think that we should be asking ourselves to better lead our customers and teams over the next year? I hope that if you guys have not read The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek, it is one of the best books that I've read in a long time about the way that we should be thinking and what we should be approaching. It's interesting, there's all of this attention right now on business building, right? There is like daily mentor calls and all of these type of things that are being reunited or ignited. And it's interesting, I think a more important question is how we are doing the same thing for our customers, right? Because our customers will always drive our business in a much greater way than any amount of people doing daily mentor calls. And so, kind of thinking about, are we innovating as aggressively as we are trying to innovate on the business side for our customers? So anyway, any other questions or comments? We'll finish up. I don't want to shut it off before you guys have all felt like you could chime in or speak your heart. If everyone's good though, I'll post all that.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much, and especially with the consistency factor coming up, because if I could ask myself a question that would, kind of stoke me to become a stronger leader to customers, to business builders, it is where does that inconsistency come from for me? And because I I have ideation in my top 5 strengths. And Ange, we were talking about this and with Becca Nixon, and I was saying that like, I have lots of ideas and lots of creativity, and I love designing. I love creating things, and I created a podcast, and a lot of people have been really loving it. But then I only did 5 episodes, and then I was one of those people that just like did the slow fade into like, you too, Kirsten? Yeah, into like not doing it anymore. And it's like, okay, well, where does that inconsistency come from? And that's the answer that I am needing to find right now. And I know some of it is rooted in some self-worth stuff. Like I know that some of it is rooted in fear, but I need to find out what is going to wake me up every day just stoked and on fire and excited to do these things and use my voice. And so you guys bringing this up today was very timely, and it's kind of sparking that questioning that needs to happen. And maybe I just need to get quiet and, do a little digging to find that answer. But that's my raw heart on the table for you.
Yeah. Tell Jenny in the bed next to you that she needs to be quiet. You guys have, oh, there she is there. Shh. Let her think. Let her think.
It's funny. At one point, you guys had like a very serious moment. She's like, oh my gosh, we should totally high five each other like this. I'm not doing that right now. Like, they're talking about
awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, very, very cool. Thank you for sharing. Megan, Roxanne, Julie, Colin, anyone else? You guys good to go? High five. Okay. All right, guys. Well, we'll talk to you soon. I'll have her send out everything. So look out for that here in the next, maybe this afternoon. Okay. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you, Ange, very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. So
Yeah.
great to be on with you guys. Thank you.